Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us here this morning. My name is Miria Gray. I'm the Community Education Officer at Chelsea Groton Bank. We have been seeing a lot of fraud here at the bank, in the community, and basically around the world. So we thought it would be a great idea to bring together some professionals to talk to you about the types of things that we're seeing, especially in this area. So today we have with us Chrissy Caplet. She is with our securities and she handles most of our fraud activity. We have Alexis Khan, which she is with Chelsea Groton's business banking team, and she is the one that would help our businesses figure out how to get systems in place to help alleviate some fraud issues. And we have Officer Christina Nacito from the New London Police Department. She is going to be talking about the types of things that we're seeing, maybe not here at the bank, but out in the community, and telling you how you can probably contact your police department if you need to report something. So I am going to start out by introducing Chrissy Caplet. She is going to start talking about what we are seeing here at Chelsea Groton Bank.
Thanks, Maria. Share my screen. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this morning. I'll go through some real situations that we've witnessed happen to our customers. It's important to share what's really happening to help educate. These are just a sample of the fraud that we've been exposed to. There's too many to show all. So for clarity, the security department tracks all types of fraud that we encounter. These figures reflect every attempt, checks that were stopped at the teller line and those accepted that we were able to collect on, or those we're working on collecting on. Check fraud attempted through mobile deposit, wire transfers that we've stopped, any scam or counterfeit check we encounter for consumer and business accounts. As you can see, there's been a significant increase year over year from 2021 to 2022 to date. The largest area of fraud comes from checks. The biggest fraud attempts we have had came from a counterfeit check on a business account, which we'll discuss shortly. But more than 75% of our fraud exposure has been coming from attempts on our business accounts. We'll specifically cover the following attempts of fraud that we've seen: counterfeit checks, altered checks, forged endorsements, and even wire transfer concerns. I'll show you real samples. You'll see on my examples that I block off identifying information in regards to our customers and their account numbers. I tried to leave some parts of the payees so you can start to see the difference in handwriting or font style. I wasn't too concerned about protecting the scammers, but I wanted to be respectful of what we show. So counterfeit checks, checks that have been created fraudulently. The check stock may have been purchased from a check vendor or even printed from home. So we had a municipal account that encountered a counterfeit check. This check was uncovered by the bank during our daily check review. I left some of the information on the check so you could clearly see the differences. So the top is the counterfeit and the bottom is the legitimate check. The check stock is completely different in the counterfeit. The layout is different, our Chelsea Groton logo on there, the font style between the two, and of course the signatures. We had an IOLTA account that experienced a huge amount of fraud. At last count, we had 43 counterfeit checks totaling over $4 million attempting to clear this IOLTA account. The check amounts ranged from $2,670 to $113,000. This is in our healthcare industry. Again, counterfeit check, you can clearly see the difference between just even the font. Check style is a little bit different. Our logo, where it's located on the check. So altered checks, these are checks that our customers have written out that have been changed. Usually either the name of the payee, the amount of the check, sometimes the date is changed. This was an altered check that was originally payable to the town for taxes. The perpetrator washed and presented the check for a different payee. our customer was notified that their tax payment was never received, which is when we then uncovered the altered payee. That was the only thing that was altered on this check, was the payee. This next check was discovered during our daily check review. This check was mailed by the maker and stolen en route to the payee. You can see on the pay to the order of line that it looks as if it was just written over. Something was whited out. Forged endorsement, a check or negotiable instrument that's been materially or maliciously altered. The endorsement is either missing, or if it's endorsed, it's not the payee of the check. So we had a business customer that had 7 checks stolen from the post office blue collection bins. These checks totaled $38,725. The checks were all deposited at the larger banks, PNC, Wells Fargo, TD Bank, most likely through mobile deposit or the ATM. The depositing bank is required under UCC to return the funds as they paid the check to the wrong person. However, there is no time requirement for them to pay. This incident happened last November, and we're still attempting to collect on 2 checks 12 months later. The wire transfer, it's really business email compromise. In this age of digital technology, many of us rely on email to conduct business, both personally and professionally, and there probably isn't a day that goes by without checking our email. But with that convenience comes with a bit of risk. According to Security Boulevard, business email compromise continued to rise in 75% of the industries in 2020. Email compromise fraud consists of schemes where criminals compromise a victim's email account and send fraudulent wire transfer instructions. The breach arises when the hack to the email of the intended recipient occurs. The hacker monitors the email communication and changes the wire instructions sent to the party that originates the wire. The wire gets redirected to an account other than the account the original recipient intended. When we initiate wire transfer requests, we ask a lot of questions. It's not to be nosy. It's really to help understand the purpose of the wire and who is requesting the funds. One question we ask is, how did you confirm the wire instructions with the beneficiary? That means if you get the instructions via email, we ask that you pick up the phone and call the beneficiary to confirm the account number and the bank information that was sent. It helps ensure email instructions have not been compromised. We did have a business customer have their email account hacked, and the fraudster intercepted their wiring instructions, which had been sent. So what is Chelsea Groton doing? So we do a daily check review. My team looks at images of in-clearing checks on all customer accounts to see if we can identify counterfeit or altered checks. We used to review only checks written for more than $10,000. We've had to lower that threshold significantly and are reviewing more than 500 checks daily. If we have any concerns about a check, whether it's the check stock, the check number, the dollar amount, signature, we will call our customers to verify its authenticity. Our team members are always learning. We do check fraud training and a monthly Zoom called CGB Fraud Watch to share instances of fraud that we've encountered for the month. The purpose of CGB Fraud Watch is to promote bank-wide communication about fraud. This will help us to be better equipped to help prevent losses both to Chelsea Groton and to our customers. The hope is by sharing, it allows us to be more aware, to ask more questions and help understand situations. Our business banking team regularly has conversations with business customers about positive pay. The plan is to inform our business customers about positive pay before they're exposed to anything deceptive. It's a great tool for our business customers to prevent fraud. In the event the business experiences fraud, we deploy a team to work with the customer to first handle the fraud situation and then decide what's best to do next to help our customer. And of course, our education classes. Myria does a great job hosting a wide variety of classes to help educate our customers. We encourage customers to review their accounts regularly, paying particular attention to the image of the checks clearing and the endorsements. Sign up for online banking. What more can you do? Review your accounts regularly. Signing up for online banking, again, review activity, of course, positive pay, and then calling us with any questions or account concerns that you may have.
Oops. Thanks, Chrissy. So when you say wash a check, what does that mean?
To wash a check, there's chemicals that fraudsters will use, and it removes the ink from the check. Sometimes it doesn't do a very good job, and you can still see the writing underneath. But sometimes, with a lot of patience, it will remove all the ink. So when they rewrite it, you can't see anything underneath.
And do we know how they are intercepting these checks, or is there something that they can do to prevent the interception?
One of the biggest places of interception is those blue collection bins. Most of our customers that we've talked to, just even from this year, when their checks have been stolen, it's been out of those blue boxes. Fraudsters will they'll basically put something down in there. Sometimes it's just even like sticky tape, and they put it on the end of a string, and they see what envelopes they can get out. So we're encouraging customers, obviously mail your bills at the post office, but go inside, place the envelopes inside the post office.
Great, thank you so much. Does anybody have any questions for Chrissy? She'll still be on the call. If you think of something, we can definitely ask at the end. If nobody has any questions yet, then I will go ahead and introduce Officer Christina Nocito. She is with the New London Police Department, and she is going to talk about what we're seeing outside of the bank.
Good morning. Thank you, Miria. Like she said, my name is Officer Christina Nocito. I'm the community resources officer here at NLPD. I used to also work at Chelsea Groton Bank prior to this for 22 years, so I am familiar with all these types of fraud that the bank and other banks and customers are experiencing. From this end, I have heard through conversations with other officers and other departments, the check fraud. A lot of that's coming back. It's one of those, it was the simplest way to commit fraud, and it's coming back, Another type I've heard, which is outside the check fraud and the wire fraud and the other types of fraud that Chrissy shared, is with your own merchant terminal, your little credit card processing machine, where unauthorized people might be running refunds on the credit card machines and crediting their own credit cards, which and then they could use to purchase whatever they need to. So in essence, the business customer or their business checking account is being defrauded by being debited for credit card purchases where they usually are credited. That's one thing that's happened recently where I've seen. As far as ways to also protect yourself with the check fraud is if you can't get to the post office, is having your own mailboxes locked. I mean, I have seen business customers and even regular, personal neighbors or myself have our mailboxes where we have a lock where only we can access our own mail. And like Chrissy said, bring it directly into the post office. I've seen growing up, I actually grew up in London, just seeing people walk up to someone's mailbox and take out the mail and run. Unfortunately, that still happens. Trying to think what else. Oh, back to the merchant terminal. I would just ask yourself questions like, who has access to your terminal? Is the users that are allowed to use the terminal, do they have their own PIN numbers? Is that capability there on your merchant terminal? Does more than one person balance your books? Sometimes I remember working at the bank, we had a business customer who one person was in charge of doing the bookkeeping, and where in fact she was actually processing refunds over and over again to her own credit cards without the business knowing for a long time, until some outside audit or someone raising questions about their income or less of profits happening, and come to find out that bookkeeper was running refunds against business that racked up hundreds of thousands of dollars lost to the business. Review your online accounts daily. That way, I know we have the positive pay. I'm sorry, Chelsea Groton has positive pay. that can pick up check numbers that are out of sequence and payment amounts and things like that. But it's also, beneficial for the customer themselves to go online, check their account, especially when it comes to ACHs. If they don't have that part of positive pay turned on for electronic debits, businesses are under a time frame where they can dispute an unauthorized debit to their account. They only have 24 hours to dispute business debits like that, whereas a regular consumer account has 60 days. So that's just something to keep in mind. For positive pay, I know a lot of businesses have the checks. So I would just encourage turning on ACH if the ACH portion of the positive pay hasn't been turned on. That's basically what I've seen here. Again, is the check fraud. I've heard of the wire fraud still happening just by reading it online. And then the merchant terminal issue that I heard about recently happening to a local business here. So.
Great, thank you so much.
Yeah.
And that merchant terminal issue, that is a security issue on the business end. Just make sure you're changing your passwords regularly, knowing who has access to those terminals, and making sure that you're using secure passwords. We can go back to Chrissy at the end to maybe talk about what would be a more secure password to be using to keep your emails, your internal emails, your business emails, plus all of your accounts secure. If anybody has any questions for Christina, please feel free to shoot them in, but she will also be here until the end, so we can pass some questions.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, so we will move on, and I will introduce Alexis Khan, who is with our business banking department, and she will help manage all. She would probably be your first point of contact if there was fraud on your account, or if you thought there was fraud on your account, and she would be the one who will help you manage your business accounts as well as protect your business accounts. Hi, Alexis.
Hi, Miria. Thank you very much for the introduction. I'm going to share my screen. And incidentally, this is a total aside, but I think it just demonstrates how the scammers and fraudsters are getting even more sophisticated, and there's just a new scam that they come up with every day. Last night I was reading an article in the Wall Street Journal, just completely by happenstance. It happened to be about fraud. And it was about a new scheme called pig butchering that I had never heard of. I don't know if anybody else has heard of it. It was a recent article, so I don't know if it's kind of a newly identified scam. It doesn't really affect businesses so much. It's more of a personal scam related in a nutshell, basically. A text message being sent that is establishing a relationship with somebody, and then ultimately getting them to invest in a cryptocurrency. So, hopefully we are all sort of savvy enough to avoid something like that. But they had a couple examples of people who were, fairly sophisticated, and they just got sucked into these schemes. And one example they were giving, this woman lost $1.6 million, and the FBI basically said, I'm sorry, there's not really any way we can get this back because it was international. The people who were conducting the scams were internationally based. So, this is not something that necessarily we're seeing, certainly, thank goodness, on the business side, but just because I had read that article, I just thought, it seems like there's just another way for them to perpetrate, individuals who kind of fall victim to these cases. And if you're interested, it's in the Wall Street Journal. Just, I think, Google pig butchering and fraud, maybe, so that you don't see other things. So just, again, to kind of scare you just a little bit more before we go into some solutions, just some statistics that we had pulled: 68% increase in the number of data compromises in 2021 versus 2020. So just this is really prevalent. It continues. We're seeing more and more every day, kind of both on our side, but also, more holistically, more globally. Losses resulting from cyber attacks, such as the business email compromise that Chrissy mentioned, and ransomware, totaled $72 million in 2021 just in Connecticut, which was up from 41 million in 2020. So again, this is up a lot. The average data breach cost rose from 3.86 million in 2020 to 4.24 million in 2021. And check fraud, to Chrissy's point, has tripled from August to October of 2021. This below just kind of the cost of fraud, this is kind of fictitious calculations. Obviously, this is not a concrete number, but just kind of giving you some highlights to kind of put it into perspective for your own business or organization. According to Business Fraud Prevention, the average loss in the event of a fraud event is 5% of gross revenue. So, and then what is sort of the likelihood at any given time that you will have fraud is 28%. So you can kind of put it into perspective of, this 1,167 is a weighted value, but, just to kind of give you some perspective on both the probability and the cost associated with the average compromise based on your annual revenue. Because a lot of what we see in the news is, the big scams that are affecting larger businesses and larger organizations. And so therefore the numbers are quite large, but you also think, oh, well, my business is small, maybe I'm immune because the fraudsters aren't going to come after me and it's not going to affect me as readily. And that's just not true. So enough scaring you. Now I'll come provide you with some solutions. I'm going to go over these, kind of quickly at a high level, certainly with the objective that if you have any questions or want to drill into something deeper, we would be more than happy to speak with you about the details of these individual services. But these are some of the ways that we present to our customers in a way to safeguard their accounts across different avenues of their account maintenance. So the first, we've referenced it, Chrissy referenced it, Christina referenced it, is really Positive Pay, because that's our fraud detection service. So that is, in a nutshell, it puts a layer of protection on your account. It's for business accounts, and it protects both the check side and the ACH side. To start with the checks, what you do is essentially upload a check register of all the checks that you've written out of the account on a day from your accounting software. So a lot of people use QuickBooks. That's a common, easy export out of your QuickBooks, your check register into an Excel format. And then you upload it into our online banking system in a Positive Pay module. And as those checks that you've basically created, the list of checks that you are accepting to be written out of the account, these are your authorized checks. When the checks are being presented for clearing against the account, Positive Pay system is reconciling that list that you've uploaded with what is actually clearing the account. So for example, it could just be a check that comes through that you don't even have on your check register, or it could be a modified check. So, they've modified the number from $100 to $10,000. So it will catch both kind of scenarios. And what it does is, if there is any anomaly, it's going to send you an email. The system's going to send you an email. You log into online banking and you review any exceptions, any kind of incongruences between the check register and what's presented for clearing, and you can accept it or reject it. So it could just be, something that was a coding error, or you forgot to put in a check, or it could be fraud. And then you've caught it within that 24-hour window that Christina referenced, because then we have the ability to return it without any kind of issues getting your money back. The other part of it is ACH, as Christina referenced. So the ACH is more of a whitelist that you're building of any kind of recurring debits to your account that you want to come out of your account without being bugged every single, getting the email every single time. So you could say payroll comes out all the time. You have a payroll company, put in a quick plug for, we offer Heartland for payroll services, and you can also always work with, if you have a CPA that provides payroll as well. But that will be whitelisted so that as long as it's within a certain parameter in terms of dollar amount, that will automatically go through without requiring an exception to sort of minimize the workload on your side. So that's, it kind of captures sort of all of the transactions that are possibly money leaving your account, so that it's safeguarding it and enabling you to review it before anything, you know, worse can happen. So that's a really popular service. Again, with all the fraud that we're seeing, the customers that we have on it have really, you know, appreciated it, and it's a great way to add protection to your account. Just to put in a quick plug, so one of the things that, you know, I talk to customers a lot about positive pay, but it's hard to sort of visualize what the work will entail. It's very easy once you're set up, but, you know, there's questions around how exactly do I do this? And so we are providing 2 demos to anybody who wants to join of our positive pay kind of, you know, I can just show you a dummy site basically that we walk through the procedure. We're offering that on November 7th, so next Monday at 8 a.m. and another session, so a virtual as well, November 8th at noon. So we'll be sending out to this group the registration link, but I just wanted to let you know, I know it's sort of conceptual the way that I described it, but we can show you the nuts and bolts on the back end to give you a sense for what it entails through these little demos. It shouldn't take more than 15-20 minutes.
Alexis, I put the link for registration in chat, so they can just click that link and register.
Great. Thank you very much, Miriam. Next, just to talk about ACH origination for a couple minutes. Basically, this is not inherently a fraud detection service by any means, but really we recommend it because ACH by kind of default, instead of checks that you're cutting, you're mailing, they're sitting around in mailboxes or sitting on somebody's desk, and who knows, you know, who has access to that check with all of your account information, your address, you know, basically everything needed to basically essentially get into your account. ACH origination, you're pushing out the payment to another party. You're not disclosing any of your account information. So you're collecting and storing in a very secure manner the payment instructions for the party that you're sending payment to. So it's giving you the control and it's not exposing your account information. The other features that are really great about it is that in order to access that ACH origination module, you have to have an RSA token. It's a security token with a randomly generated code. And so you can't get into that module without that additional layer of security. So when you think about, you know, you don't have that security necessarily for writing a check versus you can't even send the payment unless you add in this additional code in addition to your online banking credentials. The other thing is you can set it up sort of the similar way. If your organization has a dual signer kind of structure with checks, you can have a dual approval process. So let's say you want somebody to originate all your payments, but you want to make sure that you review everything before they actually leave the account. You have the ability to set it up. So I just get an email that says this payment has been initiated. Is this approved? And you can review all the details and then only send it out once you've approved it. So sort of that dual control piece of it exists as well. So just to mention that between positive pay and ACH origination, this is a great way to kind of further secure your account if you have the two hand in hand. Another thing that I will mention, a lot of businesses we find set up sort of a ZBA or some sort of separation of accounts for, let's say, collecting payments or their payroll account or something like that, so that there's not access to that full pool of funds that's in your operating account, to, basically giving somebody access to all of your balances in a main checking account. It's sort of separating it out so that if one account were to be hacked, they only have access to that one, account balances. You can do it through, as I said, a zero balance account, which just basically means it zeroes out at the end of the day, or you can just separate it out into different accounts. So a common one, as I mentioned, is payroll, another one, receivables. So let's say you're having your customers pay you directly into your account, and you're giving them basically your account information, providing it for that account that basically doesn't have any money at the end of the day, because then you're protected by a layer from your main operating account. So just kind of thinking about who has access to my account information because of paying me directly, and how am I going to structure my account so that if I did receive some sort of hack, they wouldn't have access to my full nest of acorns, my full basket of acorns, I should say. The next, entitlements. So, this isn't a service per se. It's not a paid service like a ACH or Positive Pay is, but just to mention, there's a great amount of internal and basically external security just embedded in the entitlements feature of our business online banking platform. So we do see a lot of businesses where different users will be sharing the same online banking profile and the password. And, we really recommend against that. There's the ability to set, let's say you're the business owner and you want to grant certain access to, let's say your bookkeeper, let's say your accountant or any number of people, you have the ability to do that, but to really restrict what they have access to so that you're not just giving them carte blanche to everything. You're giving them exactly what they only need. They only need to be able to look at your account statements at the end of the month. So that's all they have access to. And then if there is some sort of fishy thing on the account, you can pinpoint it to exactly who logged in and who, where that, who was responsible for that transaction. If you just gave out your password to multiple people, you would never know who exactly was kind of it could be an accident. It's not necessarily that they were committing some sort of fraud, but you at least would be able to acknowledge, who was doing that. It's really easy. Again, it's free just to be able to add entitlements to different individuals. And then you're also, when you think about passwords, and I know we're going to circle back to this, but, think about you're supposed to create a different password for every single different system. But, there's probably a lot of overlap. It's not recommended, but, it's just common nature that you're going to potentially set up passwords that maybe are similar between systems. So if you gave somebody your password to online banking, what could they sort of surmise based on the password that you provided them for online banking to other areas of your life? This is just to quickly mention the Smart Card app. This is something that we've rolled out fairly recently. You'll see more on this on the business side to come. But for those businesses who have debit cards for their employees or even just personally, this gives you a lot more control through an app for your debit card on what locations you can are authorized to receive those debit card transactions. What industry type. So when you think about, let's say you have some employees who are out on the road and you want them to just be able to charge gas because they're, using a vehicle for your business, but you don't want them going and, buying Starbucks, you can restrict the access on that individual debit card. So it gives you a lot more control over your debit card utilization. So that's a great new feature from a security standpoint that we've rolled out, and I'd highly recommend it. And then lastly, just alerts. This is something that exists, again, a regular standard feature for our online banking platform, and basically just the goal of being able to. Obviously, you want to review your account activity every day, as we mentioned, because of that 24-hour period for businesses. But we understand that, sometimes you just are busy and didn't get to it. Obviously, that's not ideal, but being able to establish alerts. So even that it's in real time that you're getting notified of something that potentially could be fishy or out of the ordinary, instead of maybe, waiting until the end of the day when by then it's 8 o'clock at night and you're like, now what do I do? I found something fraudulent. So these alerts, you can set them up with a lot of different parameters. You can receive them by text message or by email, but basically looking out for, did a large check clear my account that I really wasn't expecting? Did I have a large withdrawal? Is all of a sudden my balance below a certain limit, in which you would have never expected that to be the case because you knew exactly how much money you were supposed to have in the account. So this is just, if you don't use it already, would highly recommend setting up those alerts. So that's my presentation for now. Any questions on that? Certainly you can feel free to contact us. I'll put my information in the chat, but any of these services can definitely give you more information. And as I said, if you want to join, if you want to schedule a one-on-one demo at any time, you certainly can, but also, that those demos that we're providing for everybody.
Alexis, when you were talking about the sweep accounts, that might really be a big help for what Officer Nocito was talking about with the card swipe devices, because if you only had all of your deposits going into a sweep account, the only thing that they could debit from for repayment would be out of that sweep account, right?
Right.
So if you're worried about, if you're using a credit card reader and you're worried about payments going in and somebody then reversing payments to somebody that they're not supposed to be receiving, if you talk to Alexis about a sweep accounts for your card reader, she could help you with that. Does anybody have any questions for Alexis before we move on? I just want to circle back to Chrissy about passwords and security, and because we are all here, right? But your employees may also have access to your systems. And if they get into your system through an employee, they may be able to access your things. So making sure that we're all secure and we're using secure passwords is really important. I do not see any questions for Alexis right now. In the chat is that Positive Pay demo link and Alexis's contact information. So if you'd like to see Positive Pay, if you just click on that CVent link, and it is a real link, we're not going to defraud you by clicking links in this Zoom call. So if you click that link, you'll be able to register for one or both, or sign other people up for Alexis's Positive Pay class. So with that, we'll circle back to Chrissy. Chrissy, can you talk about passwords a little bit?
So yeah, passwords. Alexis touched on the fact that you shouldn't be using the same password over multiple sites. Phrases is probably the best way to do it, but uppercase, lowercase, symbols, numbers, it should really be a mix of all of that. We've actually, at the bank, we have changed our password requirement to 14 characters, which has been a challenge, if you're not using 14 characters, but phrases are probably the best thing to do. Something that you can remember. Don't use the simple things like summer 2022 at number 1, you know what I mean? And then keep going up to number 2 and then number 3. You really need to change that password every time.
Great, thank you. And password phrases for everybody that may not be familiar with them. So say, you're requiring your employees to change their passwords every 90 days or every, 6 months or whatever it is, or even every year. A password phrase might be something like, I love Musquamaket, but making all of the A's the @ sign. You could make any of the E's the number 3. And pass phrases like that, because it is all basically one word, it's really hard to break that, because unless you know what the pass phrase is, it's really just a jumble of letters and numbers, right? So unless somebody can think about what might be in your brain, then you know, that is a really good way to go. And you can get the much longer passwords without having to remember 14 random characters and numbers and symbols.
And it seems pretty, it seems pretty common to, or it should be common sense to say, don't use your date of birth, don't use your phone number, don't use any it's the same thing like your PIN number, don't use any kind of personal identifying information in any of your passwords.
Right. The other thing that I would say is be careful on social media, only because if you think about how many friends have say that their account has been hacked and they have lost access to their social media account, are you unfriending that person? Because if you're not, then whoever hacked their account can see everything that you're posting. So all of those forms that you're filling out that seem really fun, like what is the street that you grew up on, or what town, or what was your first car, or what's your favorite song, all of that seems very mundane to us. But those are the types of passwords we use. So we use things that are important to us. So just making sure that, one, we're unfriending people who say that their account has been hacked, and two, that we are not on social media filling out any of those fun forms, which seem like we're not really giving out very much personal information, but in reality we are. I didn't realize that alerts were available for account activity. I just turned that on for my 2 business accounts. Thanks so much. Thanks for mentioning that.
I would say that's also useful for your own personal accounts, not the business accounts.
Right.
Right. Especially thinking through, are you using the same types of logon information for your personal accounts as you are for your business accounts? As Chrissy mentioned, as Alexis mentioned, we do have a tendency to use the same password for multiple things, even though we shouldn't be. But it's just human nature, and we can't remember, 900 passwords for all of the accounts that we're in. So just making sure that we're turning on account alerts so that if they get into one account, they can't get into both.
One thing I was just going to say for businesses, and a lot of what we learn in addition to firsthand experience, but is through the cybersecurity awareness training. And so we use a company that basically sends out, we have regular, very frequent trainings on different topics that is sent out to all bank employees, and you have to take a quiz and everything like that. But this is great, for an organization, even if you just have a couple employees, because then you're making sure that your employees are aware of the kind of latest scams, how they can be perpetrated. We use a company called KnowBe4, but I'm sure there's a lot of other security awareness trainings that are out there that we, just for all of your employees, it's highly recommended, because you might know all of it. You may stay up to date on it, but you don't know if your employees are aware of everything going on. And the level of sophistication too, to Miria's point, with using, all of this social information to be able to establish a rapport with you that makes you think, you kind of let down your guard, because you think, oh, well, they reference these people that I know, so I must know them somehow. And then next thing you know, they're trying to get into scam you.
Yes. Christina, did you have something?
I was just going to say too, it's not just your employees that are in the office that you have to be able to trust. Who comes in after you leave, for the night? Your cleaning services. I would just make a mental note, how easily available is your check stock? Is it locked up at night in a drawer that only certain people can access? The merchant terminal, is it locked somewhere where only the bookkeeper or the office receptionist or whoever can access? Your computers, can anybody, when you leave for the night, it goes into its screensaver mode, but can anybody just click on a Control-Alt-Delete and sign on and go willy-nilly on your computer? Just be sure that there's passwords and everything like that set up on your computers. I was thinking about the earlier question about how can the checks be washed. You know, a lot of people go to YouTube to learn how to, you know, fix their fence, whatever. Fraudsters go to YouTube also to learn how to conduct fraud. So while we were talking, I just went onto YouTube real quick to how do you wash a check? Because I already know how. I mean, I've taken classes, but you can go on YouTube on your phone and ask that question. You'll see videos of people washing checks to get the ink off of there. So, you know, not just for the fraudster point of view, but as the consumer business customer, it's also good for you to know that this is probably how this is happening. Is there a 100% surefire way to prevent that? Probably not, but there, like we're talking about today, are ways to mitigate that risk and make it as low as possible. I know there's talks of certain types of pens, like gel pens, they say, can be used to help cut that risk of washing the check. Is it 100% foolproof? I don't know, because it still happens. But, you know, just keep things in mind of there are ways to keep that risk low.
Great, thank you. Yep, did anybody have anything else? And somebody had asked, just in case people aren't monitoring chat, can you turn on alerts through online banking? And Alexis said, yes, you can. Alerts are under the banking services at the top right-hand corner next to your name when you log on to your online banking. So with our new online banking update, you can do almost everything that you can do from a desktop computer from your online banking on your phone. So you should be able to turn all of those alerts on from your mobile device as well as a desktop computer. Does anybody have any questions, or do any of our speakers have anything else to add? Is there more or less risk with typed checks versus written? Anybody? Does anybody know?
I don't know, like statistically, but I mean, I've seen it, it's 50-50 for me, like from what we've seen for typed checks versus written. The one thing I will say for written checks is that's one of the things that we look at when we're doing check review is the handwriting. You know, we go back and we look at other checks and we look at everybody's handwriting and, you know, yeah, signatures don't always look 100% the same, but there's certain characteristics that always are. It's the same thing when you're writing out that legal line. There's certain characteristics that look the same, so if somebody's trying to alter it. But honestly, I've seen it both ways, and literally it's like 50-50.
All right. And I would probably say with that, it also depends on what kind of a printer you're using. If, you know, if your bookkeeper is using an inkjet printer, if you've ever spilled a cup of water on something that has been printed in inkjet, a cup of water will take off the writing from an inkjet printer. So just making sure that, you know, what you're using to print your checks, if you are printing your checks, is coming through some kind of a laser printer or standard copier printer or something like that, as an offer of a little bit more security. Does anybody have anything else? I recommend to all real estate clients I serve that before they list their homes for sale and showings begin, secure all checks, books, and deposit slips. That's on top of cash, jewelry, guns, ammo, and pharmaceutical drugs. Yeah, absolutely. People will be coming into your home, people that you can't control who's there. So, you know, definitely be watching out for that. Go ahead.
Oh, I was also going to say, piggyback on what Alexis talked about earlier with online banking accesses. We allow certain employees to conduct business for us because, you know, as a business owner, you may not be in the office all the time. I would just remember that when an employee leaves your business, to immediately turn off their access to whatever they have access to, online banking, the debit cards, if they had check writing privileges, to be sure that they're taking off the bank accounts to help mitigate those types of fraud.
In addition to changing all of your login passwords that they may have had access to, just because their account is active or you've deactivated their account doesn't necessarily mean that they haven't had access to something else in your system. So making sure when there is changeover of staff that all passwords are changed. It might be a great time to have everybody update all of their account passwords, because if we think about, you know, what we're doing, right? So oftentimes maybe somebody is out on the road and they've forgotten something, and somebody calls and says, hey, can you log on to my computer and just email me this? Or I left this document on my desktop. Can you please forward it to me? We do things like that all the time without thinking who we're actually giving access to our emails and our passwords, especially if you're texting them or sending them via email. We don't know who has access to that. Everybody at your phone company has access to all those text messages. So being sure that we are not sending that via text message, and that it could be just a great time for everybody to update passwords when an employee leaves. All right. And if anybody has any other questions that maybe they didn't want to air in a public forum, please feel free to reach out to myself, Alexis, or Chrissy. We can put you in touch with Officer Nacito. Chrissy and Alexis's contact information are both in chat. My contact information you got when you registered for this class, so you could just feel free to reply to any of those emails. And I will be happy to put you in touch with whomever you like. Thanks everybody for joining us today. We can hang on for a minute as people are logging out if somebody wants to stay and chat for a second. Oh, and Christina, Officer Nacito put her contact information right in chat for you also, so if you would like to reach out to her.